Good evening, everybody. I would take a motion for chair, entertain a motion for chair.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Jean Jensen for chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. All in favor of Jean Jensen as your CSSU board chair, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Here.
Thank you, Jean.
I'm honored. Thank you very much. Before we go any further, though, I just want to take a moment to recognize Colleen for 3 years board chair. In her self-imposed term limits, she's decided to step down, though she's still going to be very involved. Over the last 3 years, Colleen, you've done a really, I think, a very professional job of moving CSSU, continuing along where we all want it to go. And so thank you very much.
Thank you, Jean.
Oops, it's really wet on the bottom, so don't put it on your hood. Thank you. And I do have one, so that's from the board, thanking you for your service, and
Thank you so much.
and now that you're gonna have all this free time,
Yes.
sometime during like the 5 hours of negotiation, you told me that you wanted to read the bully pulpit, so, and you see the size of this book, she needs a lot of free time to get through it, so you can, if you have it done by next Tuesday, we can discuss it during the next negotiations.
It sounds like a task. Thank you, Jean.
Yeah,
You embarrass me.
good.
If I could just say that serving as chair has been such an incredible honor. I've really, it's been a privilege, and we have amazing administrators and amazing board members. So let's just keep doing awesome work. So thank you,
Great.
Jean.
Thank you, Colleen. So I'm going to open nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Kevin Morris for the position.
Second.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? All right, all in favor of Kevin Mara as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Kevin.
Thanks.
You're not giving me a gift. I used to be vice chair, you know.
Yeah. I gotta get my cookie out.
Thank you, Kevin.
We have nominations
do.
for clerk, which, Joan, you've been serving in that position, right?
I nominate Joan.
I second that nomination.
Kelly has
Kelly
been.
has done it, but it was that interim time of 3 members from CBD,
Oh, right.
4 members from CBD, so I thank Kelly for doing that year, and I'd be happy to do that.
Okay,
Thank
did I have a motion and a second?
I seconded.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for clerk? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I have an assistant board clerk on my list. Do we normally have an assistant board clerk?
It's good practice if
It's
you
good
don't
practice.
mind.
Alrighty.
They'll be called 3 times a year, maybe.
Can we nominate you, Bob, since you want it so badly?
That would be inappropriate.
I'm teasing, Joan, I know.
Can
I
I
have a motion?
nominate Kelly
Nominate.
Bowen?
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other nominations? Kelly, do you accept?
I do.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Continuation.
Thank you, Kelly. And thank you for your service last year, too.
But I don't get a present.
Yeah, it's a cookie right there. Now, I have a couple of committee appointments. I usually appoint to committees. The first one is the policy committee, which has been Colleen. Are you willing to continue to serve on it?
I'm doing it for Heinsberg. I'd be happy to do it for the board, CSSU board as well.
Okay. Is there anyone else who had a particular desire to be on the policy committee? All right, then I'd like to appoint Colleen McKinnon as policy committee rep. As Colleen mentioned before, the next one is the negotiations committee. We do have a member from the CSSU board, which is currently Colleen, and as she mentioned, it's good practice to continue with the same team that's gotten this far. So unless there's any opposition to that, I'm going to appoint Colleen to that too.
Thank you.
Now you got to give me the presents back.
Got a book to read.
The next one is the local standards board. This one is a little unusual in that Marilyn Richardson's been our rep to the local standards board for several years. She very much enjoys doing it, and as Susan, as your board, you know, she did volunteer to do it again. Should we appoint her to that? So unless somebody would like to be on the local standards board, I'm going to appoint Marilyn Richardson. So we do have the food service committee on here. We're not going to appoint tonight because they're going to do a wrap up shortly, right? Next couple of meetings, and after that we'll decide as a board what's going on with that committee. So the last one is the compensation committee. This committee is an administrative compensation committee. It's really in charge of making sure that the board, you know, we do our main role is to supervise Elaine, hire and fire the superintendent, and the compensation committee is a part of that. We do we do goal setting as a board. We do evaluation as an ad hoc committee when we get there. But the administrative compensation is part of that team of helping set the administrative compensation.
And if I could just
Yep.
add a little background to that. The Administrative Comp Committee, what we agreed to as a board over the past couple of years is that once a year, a subcommittee of the CSSU board would get together in the fall prior to us really moving forward with our budgets to set a rate for administrators within the SU. And so that committee, it's more than just the superintendent. We need to have a committee, superintendent evaluation committee, and it sort of emerged out of that conversation of how do we set compensation for the superintendent. But then the committee was spent time looking at all administrative salaries within the SU. Kevin, you were part of it. Jean, you were part of that. Russ, Joan. Anyone else? And so what the committee did is we worked with a consultant and looked at salary scales across the state and national comparisons and so forth. And we came up with a matrix for how to, for the superintendent to use for how to administer salary increases for her administrators within the SU. And so this committee, it's a once a year meeting that we need to meet and set a rate, you know, whatever that percentage increase might be for a pool of money across the SU for administrators. Does that make sense?
So can we suggest people that we think might have an interest? Like Eric, would you be interested in doing that?
No, thanks.
I don't want to.
Yeah, was it just sort of coincidentally that it was one from each board? It was not like the CV board or the Heinsberg board didn't choose the representative to it. We just, it's the CSSU board.
It was a CSSU
function.
board, and it was people who had the interest of that particular topic.
And it is, there's no Charlotte person on it.
Well, why don't I ask who is interested, and we can appoint those folks tonight, and if we come up short, and I know Russ isn't here and Lauren is not here, so if there's other people we can.
Or it could be perhaps a retreat item.
I'm okay not appointing this one tonight, but. All right.
So people can think about it.
Yeah.
And ask the people, yeah.
Right. Okay, so we'll.
Because there's no urgency on this one right now,
No, she wasn't.
but we don't want to
Oh,
lose track of
Oh, I
it.
thought they just said so.
No, she's not
doesn't
here.
belong.
Here tonight.
Okay, so we're not going to, I'm not going to appoint to that committee. We'll set that aside until the retreat.
Does it have to be a representative from this board, or can we look to our town boards to appoint a representative?
I think
It needs to be this board.
This board.
That is an SU function.
We have jurisdiction.
So Russ
Role
is on.
responsibility.
okay, so I need, so we need to elect a treasurer, and I understand that Jed Graff is interested, so I'll put Jed's name into nomination. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joan. Any other nominations for treasurer? Okay. All in favor of Jed Graff as treasurer, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? list. Anything else? Thank you for your patience.
Well done.
Folder there.
Hmm?
Put that list right on my folder there.
I didn't write the names down.
Oh, you didn't?
I thought Sandy typing. Okay, adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? I'm gonna step out a little bit here and say that there's 9.3 approved .2 FTE ELL position, which I don't think was in the original package, and we sent it later, so if we're all comfortable with that, you've all seen it, we'll keep going, but if someone would like to pull that off the consent agenda, I'm open to that, so.
I think as a matter of practice, not that I have much debate on it, but I'd like that not to be a consent agenda.
I kind of agree with you. We'll make that 8.3 action matter. Okay. Audience and communications? No communications from the audience?
And the music
Yes.
rules.
Only because we've got a few new folks on this board, and I don't know how many have been always in our common topics or whatever. Maybe we can just have them introduce themselves or us or something, but I'm seeing
Go
new
around.
faces to this board.
Okay.
Not new faces, but.
Let's start on that end.
Josh Diamond, Wilson.
Sorry, Kristen Wright, Charlotte, and we have another rep from Charlotte, Susan Nostring, that'll be here tonight.
I'm Susan Grasso from Shelburne on the CVU board.
Newly chair of the CVU board. Thank you.
Joan CVU board.
Kelly Bowen, St. George Board.
Kevin Merrill from Williston.
I'll pass.
Bob Mason.
Thank you. I guess I won't pass.
Jean Jensen, I'm from, on the CVU board from Williston.
Eric Hill, Charlotte.
Keith Roberts on the Heinsberg.
Kathy Stockman, Shelburne Board.
Dave Connery from the Shelburne Board.
Colleen McKinnon, Heinsberg Board.
I'm Molly McCloskey. Am I supposed to talk? Yes. Director of Curriculum. Megan Roy, Director of Student Support Services.
Cindy Kahneman Warren, Director of Human Resources.
Sandy Raymond, Elaine's assistant.
Yes, Russ Caffrey can't be here tonight, but he's still on the Shelburne Board and on the CSSU Board.
And Lorna Jimerson is also the CVU rep. And we have a board chair in Shelburne?
We do. I'd like to introduce Dave Connery as our new chair in Shelburne.
I left the room, I came back.
Congratulations.
And Russ is vice chair.
Thank you.
He's also on our policy committee.
You're learning the ropes.
Okay, we're at 5.1, or 5.0 presentations, 5.1 education quality standards. Elaine, is that?
Okay, yes, I'm going to do a short presentation. You have got the entire education quality standards. Hold on. Just be heard. I don't mean to. Just be heard with the music. I hope so. I will speak right up.
I mean, yeah,
For the people who are listening, I don't know. I will try to really speak right up. Gonna go check that out. So before I start, I just want to say that in this new iteration of education quality standards, not school quality standards, that's a key piece. That the commission that was charged by the State Board of Education was charged to come up with education quality standards, not school quality standards, and that you'll see that kind of thing as you go through. The way they organize the standards is meant to tell a story. It's meant to tell the story as here's what we care about. This is why we care. This is what's important right now in education for our kids. Here is when we look ahead what we want for our kids, and that will require certain conditions, practices, and resources, and they outline those. It will require a certain kind of learning environment. It will require professional learning on the part of our professional staff. And it will require, if we want to make sure that those two things go together, that there is an accountability system that makes sense. It's just not punitive, but that it actually has some reflection in it and it causes people to think. So I just wanted to have that be in your head before I start, because there's a whole lot of stuff. So education quality standards, the State Board of Education 2 or 3 years ago charged a commission to review the old standards and said, bring them up to 21st century standards. Let's make them output-driven, not input-driven. The old standards were about you need 3 of this, 2 of that, half of this, and a ratio of this to that. So let's not do that. Let's talk about, like, the measure of our success is about what students learn. It was based on, the new EQS were to be based on the Opportunity to Learn document that was developed by a commission that was charged by the legislature some years before that, and the Vermont Superintendents Association Education Quality Framework that we had put together. So the purpose continues to be, and this is, you're going to see this in statute, you're going to see this Act 60, to ensure that all students in Vermont get a substantially equal education and substantially equal opportunities to ensure that they meet the standards that are in here. And as a commission, we really had a job of balancing being visionary and being practical, how much pressure we wanted to exert and how much support, so balancing that. Balancing between mandating certain things and enabling. At one point in this whole process, there was some thought about not having any inputs. Not having any, well, you need, if you have 300 of this, you need 1 of that. And there was some conversation even before we got pushback from the outside about, wait a minute, really? Do we want to say that a school could decide they're not going to have a guidance counselor? They're not going to have a principal? So you're going to see some inputs in there, but balancing that. And then balancing personalization with equity. So at the very front end, there's a whole bunch of definitions, and I just pulled out some. These are kind of the new ones. And I think this is important because, you know, they're going to define everything. It's 1 page of definitions. It's not all the jargon that you hear. It's not all the things. But the things that are on those pages, that's because that's the emerging important stuff. And so I pulled out the ones that you guys have heard about, but like they want to make sure that every Vermont school is talking about college and career readiness, needs-based professional learning, personalized learning plans, proficiency-based learning. We'll talk about all of these a little bit more because they're embedded in the quality standards. Technology integration, we're going to be talking a whole lot about that because of the technology audit we just did and how that has ramped up our attention to that. And transferable skills, right from our outcomes. So there's a whole section that is that focuses on curriculum and instruction, and in curriculum and instruction, they include the instructional practices. So it's not just, oh, go teach science, math, whatever, we'll get to that. But it is about the instructional practices matter. And some of those are listed here, flexible pathways, that there have to be different ways for kids to learn. Virtual learning, work-based learning, service learning, dual enrollment, and even early college. Career and technical, making sure that there is appropriate counseling to students so that they understand what's available at the technical centers. And personalized learning plans, that is actually, there's a statute on that. So that's how important the legislature thought that particular piece was. And we will all be implementing personalized learning plans at a minimum grades 7 through 12 in the next 2 years. And then there's a whole section on curriculum. So there is a section on curriculum. We didn't just say, oh, whatever, make sure you know your college and career ready and it's personalized and all of that. You do have to include literacy in your program of studies. And literacy has all the things that you know literacy to be, but it also specifically talks about critical thinking. And mathematical content and practices. And oh, by the way, it says exactly that you have to have algebra and geometry by the end of grade 10. So that's in the standards. Scientific inquiry and content knowledge, and then they list the life, physical sciences, space, and engineering design. That's big in the GSS. Global citizenship is the area that includes civics, geography, history, world languages, cultural studies, all of that. Artistic expression includes visual, media, and performing arts. And then the transferable skills that they define as communication, collaboration, creativity, innovation, inquiry, problem solving, and use of technology.
And what about physical and health education?
And physical and health education, you're gonna hear more about that later. I'm sorry that I missed it, because that actually has its own statute too. So you know, when you're doing something like this, you have to keep looking at, the commission that was working on this had to keep looking at what is statutory. And if we're not gonna include it, then do we have to go to the legislature and say, would you mind like eliminating that from the statute? So there is a specific statute around physical education. Actually, 16 VSA 139 that defines what you need for that. So here are the inputs. K-8, participation in at least 30 minutes of physical activity. Now, when they did the hearings around the state for these standards back last year, people push back on this a lot because they're trying to figure out how we're going to do that. So it doesn't mean, this is in addition to phys ed class. So if you have a phys ed class in the day, maybe you can count that, but they're talking about within our own classrooms, within the structure of the school day, kids ought to be getting up and moving around. So it's the idea, like it's not time in the seat. We don't want kids sitting all day. So
it's not recess? That's in the classroom?
It could be recess. Recess can count, but I think it's also a reaction to people started eliminating recesses so that we could get more math and science and social studies and whatever. Saying, don't forget that part of it, because we learn all of those other things better if our body is moving. Appropriate learning opportunities to support the attainment of standards. So that's when we're balancing and we're going way out there, really, right? So that leaves it up to you. It doesn't have to look the same in every school. But then you need to have enough learning opportunities. So what's the end game? The kids learn the standards. And elementary and secondary physical and health education required. So that's that piece that's listed specifically. Curriculum has to be coordinated, and that is your responsibility to ensure. You charge the superintendent, the curriculum director, the student services director, you said make sure that across our grades, across our schools, because we're an SU, and up and down the whole ladder, that it's all coordinated and aligned. And that we're aligned with the technical centers. So that's an interesting piece. I'm not sure exactly what the structures that are going to be put in place that are going to ensure that, but that's another requirement. And informed by ongoing review and research and best practice. So that's the idea that the curriculum isn't just like a program that you bought this year and now let's learn about that program and let's forget about it because we've got a program. It's like learning isn't a constant thing. And designed to enable all students to achieve graduation requirements. And again, so we've heard this already a few times, technology integrated in all disciplines. Graduation requirements, this is huge, this is a big difference. Proficiency-based graduation. So what that says is, I'm going to read number 2 because the two are connected. Optional use of Carnegie credits. Those of you who have ever been associated with the high school know that Carnegie credits are the way we've always done it. And now they're saying optional use of Carnegie credits because for the last 12 years they've been trying to get high schools off of Carnegie credits because Carnegie credits really are about time in the seat. If you spend enough time in the seat and you do the homework and you manage to, get a C on the test, you're going to get credit. They're saying that is not the way we want to go. We really want to go with what do the kids know. So for every course of study, map out what is it we want kids to be able to know and do. And then however they get it, remember that other piece, flexible pathways, dual enrollment, service learning, work, whatever it is, if they can demonstrate that they did those things that you said, let's take an easy one, let's take French. So French 1, here's what you need to know and be able to do. And your family just happens to spend 4 months in France and you come back and you can tick off with the teacher because the teacher is written into this, then you get credit for that. And not because you sat in the seat an hour every 3rd day, whatever. So you get the notion. This is really a movement towards standards-based learning, which the high school members here know. This high school is definitely in the forefront of that and doing some major work. And credit for learning outside the school day or classroom in the EQS. Professional resources, you do have to have school leadership And the school leadership needs to have enough time to be an instructional leader. So in the old days, when you had a principal who just had to make sure that the door was open in the day, to let the kids in, that the buses were running, that the heat was on, that everybody had a classroom, and that is not the paradigm here. This paradigm here is about principals as instructional leaders with enough time to support teachers in their work. That works with the leadership team, that creates professional learning groups specifically articulated in the standards. And time to be that instructional leader and provide support and evaluation to teachers. And the input measure there is, if you have 10 full-time faculty, you need a full-time principal. It doesn't say that if you have 20, you need 2. It says, if you have 10, you need 1. And then beyond that, you need to have enough other supports to make it work. And how you do that, that is the flexibility part. In terms of professional resources for teachers, you need staff licensed, special ed, instructional and administrative staff. That's not new, we've always had to do that. And the inputs are around class size, and the class size inputs are a little bit different. So you see it goes K3, when taken together as an average, and when it was school quality standards, they were averages also. But they bundled K3 together, average 20 students, 4 through 12, average of 25, and a total class roll of fewer than 100. That's kind of a high school, middle school measure if you have somebody who's teaching all English classes or all math classes. And then except, and this is kind of a new way of thinking here, right? Except certain art, music, and PE classes that are plainly, that's the language of the EQS, plainly adaptable to the teaching of greater numbers. To the certain phys ed classes, certain music classes, band, could be way more than 25 in that room across the way. Yes, Joan?
With the total class, fewer than 100, is that for all subjects or only English?
All subjects now.
Now it's all.
All subjects. And they define a library media specialist, you should have 1 for every 300 students, and that's high school or needs-based professional development. So this is not new to you guys. We've been talking about this for a long time, but embedded into the school day. So that's a little bit tricky. I mean, I think that speaks to professional learning time for teachers to collaborate and work together within the school day, and aligned with supervision and evaluation. So the professional learning, actually, I wrote professional development because I'm so used to writing that, but the language of the EQS is learning. Everywhere that it's talking about needs-based professional, it's learning, but not development. So just the school as a learning organization. So embedded in the school day, aligned with supervision and evaluation, aligned with continuous improvement plan, which is the new terminology for action plans. Which is what it is, it's the action plan, but this is the new terminology. And connected to our school goals. So our professional development isn't whatever anybody wants to do, it's aligned with all of that. Staff evaluation includes multiple evidence pieces. So what are the data points that you're using when you're doing that? It has to be a model that is supportive. You're helping people learn and grow. It's not about like, let's just, sort and, get rid of. And provide supports. And they suggest that the supports are for improving instructional practice, improving content knowledge, and working relationships, which then they go on to talk about parents, community, and colleagues. So that notion that we're working together in this whole system. It defines a tiered system of supports, and we've been doing a whole lot of work on that here. And so it talks about its academic and behavioral systems of supports. That's the work that Megan has previously presented to this board on. And it also then has some inputs. School counseling at the elementary level, 1 to 300. At the secondary, which is really 7 through 12, 1 to 200. Health, the input across the board is 1 to 500, and it makes a recommendation for a school nurse leader delivery model. Cindy and I had a couple conversations about that. What does that mean for us? What could that look like if we had that kind of model? And is that a model that we would prefer? It's recommended, not required. The learning environment includes includes both school facilities and instructional materials. And obviously, the first part is a no-brainer, safe, orderly, bully-free, all of that. And then you have a comprehensive behavior plan. So for every school, you have a way of dealing with behavior that's systematized. And instructional materials, there's the litany, and you have adequate materials, again, so that you can reach your end goal, which is all students, college and career ready, and knowing the standards. And then we get to that final piece, which is about, well, how will we know? So the Agency of Education, under the very able leadership, I want to say, of the new Secretary of Education, is doing this work now, figuring out how that's all going to look. But I know that they are looking at multiple measures, not just relying on, in the old days, NEPAP, or in the new days, SBAC. They're talking about finding indicators. So the work that we've been doing for our local assessments, what could those be at a statewide level? And providing supports for people as opposed to just we assess, we sort out, and we punish. That's not the model that we're really looking for. Assess, sort out, figure out who needs what support, and make sure that they get those supports to grow. And then obviously, if you're not growing, then there's a compliance piece to that will come down. They're also talking about visiting schools again to come and see how we're doing against the EQS. Questions? There's a lot there, really. I was on this commission, and when I reread these a couple of weekends ago, I was like, wow. Or I guess it was one of the snow days. Snow days are so wonderful. We have a day you can really just do whatever. And I was, I don't know, surprised, but I was reminded, oh yeah, there really is it's a big change, and there's a lot here. So I definitely encourage you to read through them.
I think that it really is a big change for us. I mean, I didn't see too many things.
I think that we're in a really good place, but there were people who were very concerned about quite a few of those things around the table. So the commission was pretty big, about 20 people, IBM, Marian Lawler sat around the table. Andy Noonan from the state colleges. So there were people from all different walks of life, principals, teachers, superintendents.
And is the worries money and time to do? A lot of that were some of the big concerns about money and time.
I think that time is definitely an issue, and it is for us too. So time is an issue always. But I think it's it's like a paradigm shift. To think about, like, it's not just I get assigned a class and I am very good at spewing and organizing and giving it all, and all of a sudden, and I used to get lots of accolades for that. That's so good. And now what it is like, well, did Josh learn what you were teaching him? And if he didn't, it doesn't matter how good it looked when I was there. And I think that's a big change. That's a big, big change. So I think that there's a lot of stuff embedded there. And I don't think it's such a big change for us, though.
Well, it is if you're having all that outside thinking count towards their proficiency. And you need staff to deal with that. That's a huge time and money commitment.
Right. Well, PLPs are going to be a huge time commitment to do it right, to figure that out. And we really, honestly, and I actually argued for this on the commission, we should be starting that in kindergarten, not in 7th grade. It's just that was like so hard for people to wrap their heads around. But anybody else? Questions? So it's kind of like just a little dipstick of what we're doing here.
Thank you, Elaine. There'll be a quiz before you leave. We're on to 6.0, reports to the board. 6.1, let's say Lindy does the Colt report. 6.1, Colt report. Everybody got this?
Right over there. Oh, yes. Okay, so remember last time we talked about Act 153 and the assessment model that we would be using? So the information is in the Colt report, and this, for tonight, the idea wasn't that we would have a big discussion. The discussion's going to be next month. You have this information. Are there any clarifying questions?
Eric, why does everyone look at you when they say that? It used to be me people would look at when they ask
Oh,
that.
no, I didn't know. I was looking at you.
Oh.
I guess just the
Yeah.
obvious, we're moving towards deciding how we want to align.
How we want to divvy up the money. So we already know all of the professional staff for special education are going, there will be CSSU employees starting July 1. We had thought a year ago when we were making this decision that you could decide to continue the allocation of the expenses by school. And then both Megan and I were attending meetings where we're coming back and going, that is not the intention. So it turns out that you have to decide how you want to allocate the expenses, or it will default to ADM. ADM is how we do most of our expenses here, but there are some other choices, and that'll be the big discussion next time. Do we want to do it by ADM, which is a frozen number that we get from the state on October 15th, I think, or they take the count on October 15th and we get the number sometime later? Do we want to do it by equalized pupils, which is how Act 60 is structured? That gives greater value to students at the secondary level and greater value to students who are ELL, who are poverty. Yeah, those are the three areas where. Or do we want to do it by child count? And that would be deciding at each school what's the number of students, and without paying any attention to like degree of need, but how many students, and then figuring out what that ratio is. So that's going to be the discussion next time.
What's the difference between ADM and student count?
Special ed student count.
Student count, that's right.
Child count.
So the number of special needs kids you, especially
Within
kids
your
you
own
have.
school.
Right.
All right. Okay? All right, so, I just wanted to mention that on March 1st, Kathy Stockman and Ray Maynor, who is a high school board member, spent the afternoon with Megan and I in Williston doing a walkthrough of the professional development activities that Molly had set up, and it was a great afternoon, and I can tell you that teachers loved that we were there. And thank you for being there. It's great.
Very valuable.
I don't know if you
Thank
want to
for
say anything about it,
inviting us.
Kathy, but.
Yeah, it's great.
And I think that is it. I would just mention that the CSSU AYP plan, I didn't necessarily want to say anything more about that than it is in here. And just to remind you that there is a CSSU AYP plan. That it's the same format as the Williston, Heinsberg, and Shelburne used to develop their plan for the state. As soon as one of our local districts has an AYP plan, that necessitates then a CSSU plan. And honestly, Megan, Molly, and I all worked on that plan, and it was a lot of work, but we all felt at the end of it that it was really worthwhile. So there are some good strategies there that we've been monitoring, implementing, and keeping track of. Okay, that's it.
What was your take on the legislative update where you were in Montpelier?
Bob and I
Oh.
were in Montpelier last night. We went together. There were about 100 people there, would you say? And about 50 people testified, perhaps?
Testified on the
Governance.
issue.
So
right.
school consolidation. More of the testimonial was in favor. I mean, not hugely more, but more people spoke in favor of than not. I was surprised by the turnout and by the way it went. So I'm assuming that what's going to happen with that now is House Ed will draft a bill, I'm guessing.
Yeah, they're looking to get their bill out of the House committee this week.
This week, yeah. So we'll be hearing a lot about that in the next.
They've already missed, Kevin's question was the deadlines. They've already missed crossover, but they still believe they can move it through the process, even though they're a little late than they'd like to be.
Yeah, because I think crossover is a very hard deadline when people don't really support something, but it becomes a lot softer when all the high mucky mucks might want it to. That's my sense of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can decide how firm a line you want to maintain.
Is it different as a view of CSSU of this problem? Is it different for us than it is for many other places in the state?
I will say, I've said before, I didn't say this last night, but I've testified in House Ed on this. I think that our SU we do everything we can to behave as an SD.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the SUs that are functioning really well, that's what they do. You know, we have a very strong SU board. We have board chairs that meet to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. We have centralized policy, transportation, food service, all of the things that we've done are really behaving like an SD. And so this would just change the governance of that, because part of the piece around that is that it's fine to behave as an SD and to be really successful, but it's very fragile. Both Bob and I separately, we hadn't even looked at each other's testimony, talked about that. That you're like one superintendent, one board chair, one principal away from everybody just going in their own corners, because we have independent, autonomous units that can choose to just say, I don't want to play. I want to do my own thing. We don't choose that. That's great. And people do point to this SU for the kind of really good working relationships that we have across the districts. For some people, yes, that would be very different, because they imagine that those people in that town next door, they want something totally different for their kids than what we do. They have different agenda, they have a different values, they have.
Is the flip side also true, that it would be harder for us? Because I guess I have this, I read the summaries and I think, like, could you imagine this being a 7-person board that does everything for what was Williston, Charlotte,
Yeah.
Asbury? I mean, is that what could happen?
What was more likely to happen is that it would look like the CVU board, because that is what the CVU board is. The CVU board is a board made up of Charlotte, Shelburne, Heinsberg, Williston, representative board that looks out for all of our kids. So another thing that I would say I have come to appreciate is that I've never heard a single board member at the CVU board ever say, oh, well, what will that do for the Shelburne kid? Or what will that do for the Charlotte kid? Ever. Nobody ever thinks of it that way. It's always our kids. So that's, I think, what that board would be. It would be a board like that with a minimum of 11. So that's what they have, is 11. It could be bigger than that, but it would be a minimum of 11.
And have they considered the long-term debt implications of if they reorganize things and stuff like
Well,
that?
I certainly know.
That has been worked and is defined
It is, okay.
clearly on how that will all occur. It was part of the red law, and they're figuring to carry over much of the red structure and solutions to those kinds of problems.
Red
So
would
it's-
be the regional education district, is that what they were?
Yeah, the regional education
Essentially
district.
the same
So it's
thing.
defined on how it would be done, but it will be a discussion of significance for the group to understand how you move debt from individual towns to see in how you assess buildings and move buildings into a single ownership than across towns. But there's a plan on how that all comes about.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are other things. I mean, there are definitely details.
Yeah.
There are a lot of details.
Yeah. I mean, I went to the panel that was at MMU
Oh,
last
that's
week.
right. Right.
There was, I mean, there's some small schools that I'm sure they're doing a great job, but their biggest fear is that someone's going to walk in one day and tell them to bus their kids someplace else. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they're very, I mean, when people had chances to speak, those people spoke 5 times and everyone else spoke once. And
Right.
so it's,
That's an interesting one, because there are some people who believe that what's going to preserve the small schools, if anything, will be to consolidate, because then they're part of a bigger unit and you can move kids around.
yeah.
You don't have to have just 3 kids in first grade. Maybe there are people who live in the next town over who'd like their kid in that kind of an environment. And now it makes for a more school choice in a way. You know, it also allows for things like magnet schools. So what Burlington is doing with its 2 magnet schools, we couldn't do here. We'd have to have another school in one of our towns, or we'd be busing, I don't know. So it allows for things like that are not possible right now. And I don't know if that's how it would play out, but I know that there are some people who believe that the saving grace of the very small schools will be consolidation.
I suspect a lot of this will be coming to getting a little more nailed down in the next
Yes,
couple weeks, right?
yep.
Along
Definitely
with
will.
some of the financial, budgetary things that are getting.
Can I just
figured
ask
out.
one quick question before you close on that? So 2 years ago, that whole red exercise then was exactly that? An exercise in gauging the local interest of making reds versus today, making them anyway?
So what happened 2 years ago is the legislature thought that if they put out enough carrots, that local people would do the work and would say, yes, we want to do this. And what resulted after 5 years of that was nobody did it.
Right.
And so they went, well, you know, like people can talk about let's let the grassroots thing do this and let's even give them incentives, but if it never happens, and yet they believe that there is a better 21st century way of governing our system, they're looking at other things.
Okay.
That's really, did I say that right?
Mhm.
And if I could just add, I mean, part of it also is, with the Reds, one community could just say, no, we don't want to play.
Right.
And then that whole thing falls apart, which is what was happening. So I think legislators got the message that if there is going to really be change, it's got to be a top-down push for that, which is why they want to, you know, I guess the talk is give
Some time.
give 2 years for communities, school districts to figure out whether or not they can come together. And then if they don't figure it out by 2017, then by 2019, something may be imposed. I mean, that's the latest discussion, right? So, but you know, we came to with our Red Committee, we came to the decision that, yeah, it really made a lot of sense, but politically, we thought it was not feasible to actually have that go through. And did we really want to have our administrators invest all that energy into trying to bring something forward that we didn't think had a big chance to pass?
New board members aren't getting the VSBA legislative notes, so we've got to get you on that list, because it's really,
Sandy will do that.
really handy. It's,
Right.
They're very good.
Weekly updates.
Okay, did we do the AYP plan while we were at it? Anything else you want to say about that?
Nope.
We have no discussion matters, so we're on to action matters. 8.1, can I have a motion to adopt the regional calendar?
So moved.
Thank you, Kathy.
Seconded.
Thank you, Kevin. Discussion on this, we've all seen it in our prior meetings, so. Ready to vote? All in favor of adopting the regional calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. 8.2, can I have a motion to affirm the code of conduct?
So moved.
Thank you, Kathy.
Second.
Is that you, Kevin?
Yes.
You guys like, okay,
Hey.
next time switch, okay?
Okay.
Any discussion on this? This is a slightly different version than what CVU, CVU has their own, but I think all caves have this version that's in here?
No.
No? Different versions?
No. When we started saying, hey, we should do this every single year, there were some boards that said,
We can do better.
yeah, we want to personalize it.
Right.
And so, but really the basic, it's kind of like imagine a model policy. All of the same components are there, it's just that people. So I think this might be straight from the VSBA. This one here is straight from the VSBA, and other people have variations of that. It pretty much speaks to all of the same stuff.
You would probably have one if you were in compliance with a new governance model.
Yes.
We would.
Yeah. And you would only do it once.
That's right. You'd be home right now.
That's good.
True.
I'm gonna quote that one.
Okay, if there's no comments, and if there are no comments that are,
Right.
appropriate. What's the term? What's the term for that? Out of order or something. Germane.
Germane.
Germane. All in favor of affirming the code of conduct, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. 8.3, can I have a motion to approve the .2 FTE ELL position?
So moved.
Thank you, Kristen.
Second.
Thank you, Kelly.
This is the position that I spoke about last time, and it really was just a miss that it wasn't in the backup for you to see. So it is the increased, Molly just told me today, we this year have 3%? 3%. 2.9% increase in ELL students, and unfortunately, they're all at one school. Or fortunately, because that's where we can then pull the resources, but that's what this is about. And I'll say again, especially, yes, and especially for new board members, I want you to know that this isn't something that you can say, oh, maybe we won't do this time. Think of it as a student on an IEP. We are required to provide the services. We have a system for assessing the students to see how much services each one of them needs, and that's how we determine the supports that we need.
Any other questions
So
or comments?
this is a new position? Or
This is
point
the
two
si-
add to an existing?
It's an add to an
Point two,
existing
okay.
position.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, was it supposed to read July 2015 to June 2015?
It's from March 19th to the end of this school year. You've already put in your budget for next year a full-time person, so this is, we've anticipated the needs. So.
Reaching back to last year? I just want to make sure that I read that right.
The date on the top says July 1st, 2013. Is that correct?
Technically, that's how the contract goes.
It's the beginning of this.
She'll work
position that we're
58
adding on
days
to.
between now and June 30th or something like that.
That contract.
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which is 9.1 and 9.2.
So moved.
Thank you, Kevin. Kathy?
Second.
Thank you, Kathy. Get those in the right order, Sandy. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. 10.0, confirm next meeting date. April 9th is our regular meeting, to switch back to our normal time, so see you here at 5 o'clock. And board chair, the meeting was yesterday. And so we're going to executive session. What's on my agenda?
Motion to go into executive session for personnel.
Second.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Kristen.
The rest of us get to go home.
We're in executive session.